You're watching Chat Sports, Boston Celtics today. They've made a couple of trades here on trade deadline, and right before the buzzer, Chase, I'm Harrison Graham, by the way, one more trade for Boston. Hey, how about Brad Stevens? He's pulling a lot of triggers today. The Boston Celtics have made a trade for Daniel Theis, and this is an interesting one, Chase, because they've sent a couple of pieces to Houston, most notably Dennis Schroder.
Yeah, and Dennis Schroder has been involved in a lot of trade discussions over the last couple of weeks. According to Gary Washburn, who's based in Boston, the Houston Rockets have been very interested in Dennis Schroder for a long while. Now, that's somewhat interesting to me because Schroder on an expiring contract, $5.9 million, and they have a young team who they're building around. Do they think that Dennis Schroder is going to be a part of their long-term plans potentially? But for Boston, you get a familiar face back in Daniel Theis. You lose Enes Freedom. At the end of the day, who really cares? I wonder if Houston is going to let go of Enes Freedom or have him take the place of Daniel Theis. There's
like
a possibility for that as well. He could be a buyout candidate as well, and he's kind of been a fringe buyout type of player for a long while. But for Boston, you free up more money by getting rid of Dennis Schroder. You bring back a familiar face in Daniel Theis, and now your front court is Al Horford. It's the Time Lord and Robert Williams and Daniel Theis. And we know that Brad Stevens really likes Daniel Theis a lot.
Yeah, I mean, look, you bring him back a year after you trade him. Obviously, they value him. I think he'll be off the bench this time around, which I like a lot more. He was starting last year.
Yeah.
I think he's a great bench big for Boston. Who won the trade? Let us know. Type BOS for the Boston Celtics. Type HOU for the Houston Rockets. I'm still kind of confused. What does Houston really get out of this? I mean, Dennis Schroder is on a one-year deal.
Yeah.
Enes Freedom is not a long-term piece. I mean, unless you think Bruno Fernando is going to turn into some, I guess you get rid of Theis's contract, sure, but I'm not really sure what Houston gets. So on that front, I guess I'm going to go with Boston, although Schroeder's had a nice season as well. I guess once you get the Derrick White addition, Schroder becomes expendable. They're similar. They're kind of combo guards.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the thinking there for the Celtics. But very fascinating to see after the trio of trades today for Boston, Chase. Can they keep playing well? They've been really good the last 3 weeks or so. They're moving up the Eastern Conference standings, and I think that this is a team that maybe could make a push for a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier. Boston is really playing their best basketball since they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals back during the NBA bubble in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. And since that point, they've really been a 500 basketball team. But the last couple of weeks, they've been able to elevate to becoming a much better team. 31-25 right now, only 4.5 games out of first place in the Eastern Conference. Miami Heat sitting at 35-20. Yep. And Boston right now, led by Jason Tatum, led by Jaylen Brown, a better playing point guard in Marcus Smart, 8-2 on a 6-game tear, and they tinker with the roster without really making major changes to it. You lose Dennis Schroder, you bring in Derrick White, you lose Josh Richardson, you bring back a familiar face in Daniel Theis, who was really valued by Boston when he was in Beantown, and he's a good backup center who is really just a glue guy. Like I could kind of compare him to a player like Kevon Looney. Nothing that they do is sexy. Nothing that they do is crazy. Nothing on the stat sheet really pops out at you, but he's a good, valuable rotational piece who is a championship-level player.
He's Dwight Powell.
Yeah.
Energy guy. You don't want to start him, but if he's coming off your bench, giving you 15, 18
Not
minutes.
afraid to mix it up.
Yeah, I mean, he's physical. He'll finish around the basket, so that's what you get there. Celtics fans obviously familiar with him. This was the first trade, and this trade really set the table, Chase. Not a lot of moving parts here. Dozier and Bol were injured anyway. It was to move some money around. That trade really led to this trade, which was probably the biggest one of the day, as the Celtics bring in Derrick White. By the way, that first-round pick to San Antonio, the Spurs can decide if they want that pick to be this year or in 2028, so we'll see what happens there on that front. Romeo Langford, Josh Richardson going to San Antonio. I think we'll look back at this trade deadline in a year or two, and it'll either be really good or really bad, and that'll depend on Derrick White. Mm-hmm. Does this kid continue to grow? Because from his rookie year to now, he's really made strides as a player. Last year, 15 points. This year, 14 and a half. can he be an 18-point guy in a couple of years? I think if he can continue to blossom, then Boston will look back at this deadline and be like, we got the best player overall.
Yeah, and he entered the league at 23 years old, so he skewed a little bit older, back into the first-round pick in 2017 as he played his college ball at Colorado, but he's been coached by Greg Popovich, and I think Boston and San Antonio really align with how they evaluate players, how they operate their organizations. They're two of the most well-run organizations in the sport. So, they have that level of familiarity with Derrick White in a sense where they see the upside like the Spurs did. That's why they gave him that big contract, and they think that, okay, he can translate that from San Antonio team style of basketball and bring that to Boston and play a team level of basketball to be a nice little complementary piece next to Jason Tatum as well as Jaylen Brown. You're trying to compete this year, which is why you bring in a player like Derrick White, who no doubt is an upgrade over Josh Richardson, but also you're building for the future as well by doing some of these moves, including Derrick White.
By the way, note coming in, Rockets reportedly looking to buy out Enes Freedom and Bruno Fernando.
That's what we said.
And I kind of wonder if Schroder could get bought out.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're Dennis Schroder, you don't want to play for the damn
Rockets had showed some interest in him. So, but again, he's on an expiring deal with a young team. He could sign an extension.
Maybe he signs an extension.
That's one team he could get paid.
He's part of the Rockets rebuild.
Because he turned down that $84 million deal with Los Angeles.
Maybe they give him $15 million a year.
Yeah.
Could be a possibility. If you want nonstop Celtics updates, news, rumors, all season long and, of course, into the offseason, this is the channel for you, youtube.com/CelticsTV. We will have you guys covered with the latest Boston Celtics news and rumors. Producer Jack Lauderay has been working hard to help us get out more videos for you guys here on this channel. So if you want more videos, support us by subscribing. It's free, and we will continue to keep you guys updated with all of the Celtics moves. So we've hit all the moves. We've talked about the Celtics playing well here, Chase. What now? I mean, what's really the goal for this season if you're Boston? Probably, like, if you win a playoff series, is that a success for this year? Is that, like, enough to say, okay, we're in the right direction, we got Brown and Tatum, we're going to keep building around them? Is that fair? You win a playoff series, it's a good year? I mean, or are you wanting more?
Well, with Boston, you always aim higher. I mean, you have 17 championships, so
sure.
Year in, year out, the expectations are always really high. You have to be realistic. But, again, like, let's look back at the Eastern Conference standings. Everything is wide open. So when you have two of the best young players in the league, you get into a playoff series, no matter which team you go up against, you're like, okay, on our side, we have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They can win you a playoff series or multiple playoff series. And they're in the mix to really make a run in a wide open East. Do you buy into Miami? Do you buy into Milwaukee? Bulls, Cavs, Sixers, Raptors, ahead of the Celtics right now in the East. It's wide open and it's there for the taking.
Do want to mention this as well. Enes Freedom's already been waived. Okay. So Rockets have already cut him as we continue to get news as it comes in here. But I think you're right. Look, maybe you match up with the Cavs in a first-round series. Like, they're inexperienced. I think Boston could beat them in a series, and then you get into the second round, and who knows after that, right? Like, anything is up for grabs if you are Boston. So we'll see how it shakes out. I think a lot of it will depend on how Derrick White fits in, because I think that's the big piece that you're looking at here for the Celtics here at this trade deadline. But I do like Brad Stevens' willingness to wheel and deal here. Like,
me too.
A couple of trades. Let's dish out some guys we don't like. Let's bring in some young talent like a Derrick White as well. You bring back a familiar face in Daniel Theis, who they know what they have in him. He can be an energy guy off the bench. So I'm fascinated. I think the NBA trade deadline as a whole today was so busy that I don't think any of us really know who the true contenders are yet. Like, I think we know who the top guys are, but does a Boston emerge? Does a team in the West that we're not thinking about emerge? I think a lot of things are still wide open in the NBA.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So do you like the Celtics moves today? 3 trades. Type Y for yes, type N for no. Let us know what you guys think on this one down in the comments.